Hello, world. We're doing a podcast. Welcome in. I'm Jeff Nowak here with Steve Geller. Just going to talk for a little bit and let some people find us because we're doing this live on YouTube. This is the raw version of the podcast. It will post tomorrow as a podcast if you're into that whole, cleaned up sort of thing. But yeah, for now.
Streamlined,
Yes, streamlined. And this one, Steve, you need to do something about your internet, man. You're freezing all up on me.
Oh, no.
Like your audio is fine, but I just keep staring at a frozen picture of your face, and you're always in weird. You always give me weird looks. So I don't know. It's weird.
Luckily, you're not frozen for me, but yeah, I don't know what my deal is.
Yeah, my cricket internet is doing better. So I don't know what's going on with you, but yeah, you gotta. Cox in New Orleans should not be beating whatever you got out there in Metairie.
I got Cox.
You don't have the infrastructure. Yeah. I tried to switch to AT&T because Cox was not good for so long, but I didn't know until I had ordered the thing, they sent me it to me, and then they were like, okay, plug this into your telephone jack, and I went around the house I don't have those. And then they were like, oh well you can get them installed, and I was like, I'm not going back in time. I'm not regressing from a technological standpoint. I don't need a landline for anything other than this. You need to find a way to allow me to get it without going it'd be like buying a beeper. I don't need that, but I can't get AT&T because I don't have technology that's outdated, which is so strange.
I had AT&T and there was a whole big blow up. That's why I ended up going to Cox. So yeah, I don't know which internet I really prefer. I think it's kind of the same.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you can get just generally faster speeds with AT&T, and Cox will tell you, and this is, we're just trashing brands here. But yeah, right. Cox will tell you you're going to get this speed, but you'll end up getting 1/10 of that. And oh yeah, that's the max speed. It's like when the city was like, oh, the pumps are working at 100% capacity. And they're like, oh, 100% of what's available, which is really 40. So yeah, it's kind of like that. But yeah, anyway, this isn't what the podcast is about, but we're just getting ready.
Right now, AT&T and Cox are scratching us off their advertising list.
Yeah. Hey, if they pay for ads on this podcast, I'm I'll change my tune, hit me up. Speed up my internet. Speed up Steve's internet. Anyway, we're going to get into it. We're going to talk a lot about Michael Thomas today. We have some really good audio from him. He talked and he seemed to enjoy it, which was weird. He doesn't usually do that. We're going to get into more from the injury report. We got the first injury report of the season today. There are a few names on it, not surprisingly, because the Saints love to put out a mid-season injury report before week 1. So we'll get into that. And we will also get into a bit on what I've been, kind of putting together, which is, Bradley Roby, the Ballhawk. I talked to him about this last week, and it was funny when I asked him about it. He kind of just lit up because, these guys, Ballhawk is a term that gets thrown around, but it's a label that cornerbacks actually care about when you are one, and he considers himself to be one. So we'll talk about a little bit about that and kind of what I want to see from him and how I would like to see the Saints deploy him. We'll get into that. And then we're going to talk about, some of the keys for the Saints and not how they'll beat the Falcons, because I think that they could do a lot of things wrong and still beat the Falcons. But these will be the 3 keys to dominating the Falcons, which is what I would like to see. And that's what I think the Saints would like to do. So that's kind of what we're going to get into. And we're going to, repeat all of this when the podcast starts. But we're just kind of getting going here. So Steve's son is getting ready for football. He's going to be a guard. So that's fun.
Yeah, they just went to weigh in and got their photo IDs, and it was quite the scene amongst all the parents there waiting, and just looking forward to the season. I get to actually catch the game. They got their Jamboree game Friday, but Saturday I'll be traveling, so I'll miss that one. But at least I get to see Friday's matchup, their first game.
Why do you have to weigh in?
I guess they have to be you can't be over. I don't know what the rule is for how much a player has to be, but I think if you're over, you can't play.
Would they just send you up a level, or they'd just be like, no, you're too fat, go home?
I don't know if you'd be sent up or not. Luckily we haven't had to deal with that.
That would be kind of a rough way to like introduce a kid to football. Being like, nah, you're too fat. Sorry, you can't play. Go
But
lose some weight.
what if you're just like what if you're like the Shaq of kids? You know what I
Right.
mean?
What if you're a future NFL lineman?
Right.
You know?
Right.
What if you're 12 years old and you're 5'10", 200 pounds?
I would imagine they bump them up a class for sure.
Yeah, I'd have to. I hope that's the case. I hope they're not sending kids away, being like, "Sorry, lose some weight."
Right.
Anyway.
Come back after you work out.
Yeah, get out of here, Tubby. God, this is already off the rails. But all right, yeah, we got some people in here again. As always, if you have questions, if you have comments, if you want to weigh in on how many catches you think Michael Thomas will have, he thinks he will have 150 at the minimum. Throw that in the comments, and we'll get to him, or we won't. You never know. Got to keep you guessing. Remember to check out the podcast wherever you get yours, Spotify, Apple, whatever. We're gonna get going here in a second, and we're gonna get into that. The injury report, which. Now that reminds me, I want to go grab that screenshot. So, yeah.
Just got word leaving 3 p.m. for Atlanta on Saturday.
Nice.
Woohoo.
I didn't make the cut again.
So you never know. There's still time.
Yeah. I'm not mad.
Just a little bit. That's how I felt the last 2 years, honestly, but there's nothing I could do.
Yeah. All right, Steve, you want to kind of lead us into the podcast here?
Yeah, let's do it. Welcome in, Saints fans. It's another edition of Inside Black and Gold, and we are in game week and finally got to see a little bit of action as we lead up to Sunday's matchup against the Falcons. Some players back on the practice field, some missing that, I guess you would say, a little bit of a surprise. We'll get into something Jeff wants to talk about with Bradley Roby.
Something.
And what's that?
Something. It will be something. Yes.
And also some keys to taking down the Falcons.
No, not keys taking down the Falcons. I don't need to talk about that because we already know the Saints should beat the Falcons. These will be 3 keys to how the Saints dominate the Falcons, because that's what you should be expecting. The Saints should not be walking in to that tanking team's building and saying, "Oh, we just hope we could scratch out a win." This should be okay, we're going to walk in there, we're going to beat the bricks off these guys, and then we're going to start getting ready for the Bucs in week 2.
So I guess you're confidently taking 5.5 points then.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing. You should be confidently taking 5.5 points. And they're going to tell you all day long they're not looking past the Falcons, whatever, and that's fine. But, I would not be satisfied with going in there and getting a close game from the Falcons, because this is a team that is on paper better at basically every position. So anyway, it's going to be 3 keys to dominating the Falcons. I want to get that straight. But yeah, the first thing we're going to get into the injury report, but more importantly, we're going to get into Michael Thomas back on the field. He looked good. Every time I see him on the field, I'm like, oh yeah, was that guy hurt? I don't know. He was limited today, but that's just kind of the kind of ramp up, as we've talked about a lot, from, okay, you weren't practicing, now you're limited. In a couple of days, you'll be full, and then we'll go. But I really do think for Mike, it was like, okay, he's got a sore hamstring. We're going to give him some rest so that we can really push him this week and get him into game week. Dennis Allen wouldn't, say high or low whether he thinks Mike's going to play, but the tone with which Mike answered questions and the look on his face did not strike me as a guy who was wondering whether he's going to play. I think he's going to play.
Yeah, and I don't think he would have graced his presence with us if things weren't looking good on the positive for Sunday. Definitely a more approachable Michael Thomas today. He was actually held court in front of the entire media, which was impressive. Just sat down on one of the tables in the media, in the locker room, And yeah, I mean, even he seemed kind of happy to be talking to the media. It was a little strange.
I mean, I feel like that's the goal. I feel great. I think I had a great weekday. Coach preaches about winning the week and winning it day by day. So I think I could bank my Wednesday and look forward to coming out here and banking a Thursday.
How much are you itching to do this again?
I'm ready for all you guys to see me play. I'm itching very much. I think it's kind of obvious, but I don't want to get too excited in a couple of days.
I like that. I'm ready for all you guys to see me play.
Yeah. But no, it was interesting. And so to kind of set the scene here, Mike has a corner locker, which it's, a desirable locker because it's basically a twofer because you get both. And like Cam has a corner locker as well, but it's not very exactly accessible right now because the plexiglass kind of barricades that they put up between the lockers are still there. So he's basically in this little enclave. And, we came in and so he's there and we're about to talk to him, but only like 2 reporters can get into that corner and all the TV cameras
out easily.
Yeah. And all the TV cameras are like trying to push each other out of the way to get in there and get this like crazy angle. And I expected him to just be like, well, good luck, and then leave. But, instead he got up and like I said, I thought he was leaving, but instead he just walks around and kind of sits on the table and allows everyone to kind of gather around and talk to him. And it's like, that's not the Michael Thomas that I remember. It almost seemed like he wanted it, which, maybe he does. I think there is, and I was just talking to Christian and Bobby on Sports Talk about this. Like, I think when you miss a season and you kind of have to take a step back, just like Jameis did, and like appreciate, like, man, I actually do really like playing football. And I think a lot of the process of that feels a little different than, when you're just in that grind every day and you don't really have to kind of get that perspective. And I think he appreciates the attention now a little bit more. He appreciates the ability to just be like, yeah, I'm going to go play football this weekend. And, I think that's part of the reason you're seeing him be a little more congenial with the media. Cause I think I felt like other than Jeff Duncan, he has been very, very approachable and very friendly to the media. He's still, you can barely hear him when he talks, but I as long as you can hear him, he's been good.
Yeah, and I was definitely surprised on how he approached us today. I thought for sure, and I call them the hockey boards that were barricading us there in the locker room between how the players are separated there. I didn't think that we were going to get any kind of access to him and just be SOL. But luckily, definitely anxious to see more of him at practice during the week. I know we don't get to see much still, but him being limited today is a huge positive in the fact that you can see the likelihood of him playing Sunday is pretty high, I think, considering that hamstring issue has been something that he's been nursing since Green Bay. And I feel like he should be on track to get back. And, he fought so hard to get back from this ankle injury and look phenomenal during training camp. It would just be a huge downer if for whatever reason he isn't able to suit up on Sunday.
Yeah, and just to kind of get this here, this is the injury report that was put out today. It's the first injury report that we've gotten so far. One update is Tanner Owen is actually out with an illness. They had initially put him out non-injury related. But yeah, again, I think, and I've said this, it really did strike me that last week was a get right week for a lot of these guys. And, for, guys like Landon Young and Paulson Adebo are the ones that I'm a little more concerned with, because
absolutely,
when I talked to Landon Young last week, he told me he had kind of kicked the hip issue. So this means that the hip is still kind of aggravating. It's still kind of aggravated, and that's something to consider. Anytime you have a guy who goes out with the same injury twice, that's not a great sign. It's not a positive sign. So that'll be something to watch. He was at practice, but wasn't participating in drills. Traquan Smith was also at practice and not participating. I thought that his injury designation was interesting because I thought that he was going to be out with his shoulder, but it's actually a groin injury, which, I think that's actually a positive thing, because it looked like he went down hard on that shoulder and it would have been a kind of an impact injury that you were concerned with. So, the groin injury is probably a little less significant if it is an injury. But yeah, Michael Thomas got that hamstring. He didn't show any signs of it being an issue. We only get about 25 minutes to watch practice at this point. So we don't know exactly how much work he got in. He was in the initial drills and the routes against air. I would guess that he was not in the team portions, or at least not in them completely. Otherwise, he would have gotten a full practice. So that's going to be, you want to see that L change to an F at some point throughout the week. But again, getting him out on the field on Wednesday is a great sign. Whereas a guy like Paulson Adebo, I don't know if he doesn't practice tomorrow or Friday, I don't know if you can confidently say that he's going to be available, because he's a guy you want to get reps. And as we've been talking a lot about Mike, we know how ankle injuries can last when you don't give them enough time to heal. So I don't think this is going to be a team that takes any risks with an ankle early in the season, especially not when you have, as we're going to talk about a little more, Bradley Roby to back him up if you need it. So, that's interesting. We also, the Eric McCoy injury is one I had not heard about. He's dealing with a calf. He was limited, though. He looks fine. I haven't seen any issues with him, and obviously Pete Warner with the groin. So, a lot of names on this list. The only one I'm really concerned about is Paulson Adebo, because he's the only starter that I think is really in danger of missing time.
Yeah, and you expect, you're penciling Adebo in as your number 2 corner. Luckily, they have great depth there, and a guy we're going to be talking about soon with Roby there to back him up just in case, kind of thing. But then, you start getting a little thin now if Adebo ends up having to miss the game. I was kind of curious, though. You mentioned the Traquan Smith groin injury, and it sure looked like it was a shoulder issue when he left the game against the Chargers. And I'm curious if that's even correct. I don't know if the Saints made an error on an injury report, or if it really is a groin injury, because he was definitely looked like he was favoring that shoulder when he was walking off the field. So that's a big question right there. And with Werner, I mean, at least we're seeing him out there taking part in the practices, because that's another key one for the opening weekend, obviously, alongside DeMario Davis, because we've talked about, I think, last episode about the questions at depth at linebacker.
Yeah, and I mean, it was definitely a shoulder. I mean, DA told us it was a shoulder after the game. Like he said that. So we know he was dealing with a shoulder issue. So it's possible he's dealing with a separate issue.
Right.
We did see him at one point throughout camp, running with resistance bands on, which is kind of a hip groin thing. So maybe it's been something he's been nursing, and it's just that they're still out with it. But we'll see. We'll find out. Trey. It's anytime you're looking at Trey and he's got an injury, you're okay, another one. So we'll have to see. But either way, I feel comfortable with their depth at receiver. I'm not worried about Trey. One guy who was called up to the active roster, which makes sense, was Chase Hansen, who is now on the 53. He filled that last spot that was open after they reverted Trevor Penning and Malcolm Roach to IR. They signed Tanner Owen, and that left one spot open. That spot has been taken by Chase Hansen, and then they signed Jake Luton, the quarterback, to the practice squad. So you now have a scout team quarterback, and Chase Hansen, I'm sure, is going to slot in at the backup Will spot, because Andrew Dowell doesn't make sense there. I think he was just a placeholder until they worked out a deal with Chase. So yeah, I think if you do need a backup for Pete Werner, it's going to be Chase Hansen, which is a good sign. He's not on this injury report. So, that's good for him. One of the things that has been an issue for him has been he hasn't been able to stay healthy. So, if he's able to do that and get out in the field, that's a bonus, because I think he has been good when he's gotten a chance to play.
Yeah, and he was definitely aggravated leaving the field in Green Bay when he suffered that latest ding. And yeah, those questions came up of why is it that Chase Hansen cannot stay on the field? He's just one of those guys that has been an issue since joining the Saints of just not being able to stay on the field, and has been a guy obviously this team's liked because they've kept him around since 2019.
No doubt. So there's one other thing I do want to talk about in relation to Michael Thomas. And it is that he apparently thinks his plan is to break his own receiving record. That's his plan. And in case you were wondering, here it is.
Gold, baby.
We saw in 2019. Is he still
I'm
there?
I'm trying to top that. I'm trying to
Top
top
it.
that. Yeah, top that for sure.
So how do you look at 149 then? Is that a goal to?
At the end of the day, the one thing I learned is that the game does not change. Like, there might be new players that come in, there might be, new coaches, new whatever. The game doesn't change. It's all about creating separation, getting open, making a play, competing, and being physical. And those things I take pride in. Those things I work on every day. So I like my chances, and when the ball comes or when my number's called, making that play and just, taking advantage of every opportunity and just being locked in. I feel like sky's the limit.
Sky is the limit. Well, so the game doesn't change, but the teams change.
A little bit.
And my rebuttal to that would be, I would settle for him playing 17 games. That would be a huge victory in terms of, getting back on the field. But, we were talking about this a little before we came on. You don't catch 149 passes. You don't get 200 targets if there is a living body across from you that is like an acceptable target to throw the ball to. And that will be the case this year. When it was Ted Ginn and, Alvin Kamara playing on a torn MCL and Jared Cook as the only other viable receiving option. Yeah, I'm throwing it to Mike every time. When Jarvis Landry, when Chris Olave, when even, Marcos Callaway, when Alvin Kamara are all out there and healthy, you don't have to catch 10 passes a game to be effective, but it's going to make life easier on Mike. So hopefully he's able to generate, I don't need to see him be that crazy volume receiver, but I would like to see him make more of an impact in big plays and take advantage of the space that's going to be allotted to him that never has been before, because he was playing without, he was never played with a guy like Jarvis Landry across from him, other than maybe Brandon Cooks his rookie season. He hasn't really had kind of that star wide receiver too, and now he does. That forces teams to play honest on the opposite side of the field. So, I love the confidence. I would much rather have a confident Mike Thomas than a Mike Thomas saying, well, we'll have to wait and see,
Right.
But yeah, I think he might be overselling it a little bit there.
Another thing too is like that the relationship between him and Jameis Winston still needs to develop more. I don't think they have that same on the field chemistry that him and Drew Brees had at that point, where I think it was Drew even said, like, I could just give Thomas a look and he would know what I was going to do, kind of thing. And I know for a fact that Jameis is not there yet with any of the receivers.
Well, yeah, they've never completed a pass in a game. He's not going to have the level of trust and that he had with Drew Brees until, maybe they complete a pass.
Maybe next year he could break the record. I don't think it's going to happen this year.
It would be tough. Especially when you don't need to be, one of the reasons that you had to throw so many times is because you didn't have as dominant of a defense. When you have a good defense, you don't need to put up as many points to throw it as many times. But yeah, I think, I think the only game that they played together was the second half against the 49ers in the 2020 season. That was the game that Drew Brees cracked his ribs and had to leave at halftime. And I think he had a handful of targets, but they didn't hook up, and so you don't really know, I've said a lot. One of the things that I'm really curious to see from Jameis Winston is whether he's willing to accept smaller gains. Not every play can be a chunk play. Sometimes you just need to get 6 yards on first down and just move the chains. And that's what Mike Thomas is going to be able to get you as well as anybody. He's going to get open. He's going to get to his spot, and you just got to throw it to him. You got to trust him to be there. And, sometimes it's going to, I think, grate on Jameis's, want to extend a play and find that deep throw that, maybe will work 1 in 5 times. It's like, no, we just need to stack first downs, and you want to take that easy money when it's there. And so, that's something we have not seen, and we're going to have to see. And Jarvis is going to be the same way. So yeah, if I don't think it would be even possible for Jameis and Mike to hook up 150 times just because of the way that Jameis operates, and you're going to score quicker. Drew didn't throw it down the field in his 2019 season. Really, his arm was jello at that point. So yeah, I think again, like I said, I love the confidence, and I really do appreciate the attitude that we've gotten from Mike Thomas. I think it's a really healthy, productive approach that he's taking. But I think 150 is off the table, at least for this year.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, the attitude's a big thing, obviously, because everybody remembers all the drama that was going on between him and the now departed C.J. Gardner-Johnson. He's traded away the tiff that they had at practice, and then there was the rumors of mistrust with the franchise after things went awry with the ankle surgery. So it's definitely been a huge positive. For Thomas, his relationship with the team seems to be A-okay. I know even in the offseason, Dennis Allen flew out west to check in on him while he was doing some rehab work. And as long as everybody's on the same page, the Saints are looking gravy right now heading into the season. And I know that everybody's anxious to see all these weapons on the field at once because, we really haven't gotten that full taste of what this offense can be, I still think.
No doubt. And so Jason wanted to know if we can see what they're saying. Yes, I can. So if you have any questions, if you have any comments, throw them in there. I was just about to go through them and hit some. Jesse Hernandez wants to know, do you believe Tyron's off the field Twitter outbursts denied him the captain badge? No, I think he didn't. He's not a captain because it's his first year. And, who were the captains? Let's go through that because we never talked about that.
I know Kamara is finally a captain this year.
Kamara is, and I think Jordan, JT Gray is still there.
Jameis, Cam Jordan,
DeMario, Jameis, Cam Jordan, Ryan Ramczyk, JT Gray, Alvin Kamara. Yeah, there is no defensive back other than JT Gray in that captain's group. And, I don't know if I don't think that's because Tyron is getting after people on social media. I think it's just it's tough to show up, like have a guy show up in year one and be like, okay, you're the captain now. It sounds like a Tom Hanks movie.
If anyone in the secondary, I'd question why isn't Marshawn in there, but it's not like a huge deal.
Right. And I don't think Marshawn is, as good as Marshawn is, I don't know if he is the team captain guy.
Right.
He's a leader in that group, but I don't know. And so I think Malcolm Jenkins had been a captain in the past. I just think, they didn't feel the need to put that extra bit of weight on Tyron. And I don't think has anything to do with off the field stuff, because if you were weighing off the field stuff in terms of being a captain, I'm pretty sure Alvin would have been off the list. So I don't think that is something that you're really super concerned with. But it's a good question.
I'm still waiting for us to corner Alvin in the locker room and get something out of him.
He was there today. We didn't really talk to him. We tried to talk to Marcus May, but he said that he's not ready to talk yet. I think it's probably a legal thing that he's not talking.
Yeah, I get it.
Which I understand. If your lawyer tells you not to talk, then you don't talk. I think we would have got the same answer from Alvin. Although Alvin is going to have to talk to us pretty soon. Like from an NFL perspective, there are rules that require players to speak to the media, and he's going to have to do that soon. But yeah, we didn't chat with him today, and we were kind of all gathered around Mike's locker. So we got that. Let's see if there's any others. I don't think I have any other questions here. So yeah, let's knock off that segment there. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about Bradley Roby, Mr. Ballhawk himself. Stick around on Inside Black and Gold. Oh, hey. We didn't go very far. All right. You ready for round 2, Steve?
Ding, ding. Let's go.
All right. Okay. And we're back here on Inside Black and Gold. I'm Jeff Nowak alongside Steve Geller. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Leave us a rating. Leave us a review. Tell us what you think. Tell us what you don't. That doesn't make any sense. Anyway, we're going to get into what I've been wanting to talk about for a little while now, but I wanted to do it justice. I wanted to pull some clips. I wanted to do some film study and kind of see if my kind of initial read on things was correct. And I think it did pan out, which is I don't think Bradley Roby should be the dedicated slot corner. And I think that that's kind of where a lot of people went immediately upon seeing CJ get traded to the Eagles. And there's just been this idea that, okay, you have a dedicated slot corner for the last 3 years, and he's the guy who's there. You're not rotating. But I think this is very much going to be a rotation. And I think that in certain instances, you're going to see Bradley Roby there. But in a large number of snaps, I don't think you're going to see Bradley in the slot. And there are a few reasons why. And I think one of the big ones is I want him to do what he does best. And one of those things is being a ball hawk. And I don't think you can be a ball hawk in the slot just because of the route you're covering and where you are on the field and the proximity you are to the line of scrimmage will make it really difficult to be that. And I asked Roby kind of about, the background of being a ball hawk, and he lit up immediately. This is clearly this is clearly a title that he appreciates and that he wants to have said about him. He has 11 interceptions in his career, and he has earned them. And I have some clips about that I'll show on the video version of this podcast, obviously. But here's what Bradley had to say when I asked him about this last week. Oh no, do I not have it on here? Hold on. Okay, technical difficulties. Give me a second.
Stand by.
And one of the things that stood out throughout camp is all the interceptions. I counted 5. I don't know if there were any more. Is being a ball hawk kind of a mentality, or is it just something where you just find yourself in the right place at the right time?
I think, a lot of guys get lucky in the league and kind of get those lucky tips. Tips and overthrows, you're going to get those. You got to catch them. But you definitely have to have a mentality. Those guys that get picks every year and kind of run them up, the numbers. It's a mentality. I'm going out here to get the ball. A lot of guys go out there, I just don't want to get beat. And some guys go out there, I just want the ball. And it's really just your mindset. Because you're going for the ball, sometimes you'll get there early. A lot of guys, knock it down, yay. But some guys, I'm there early and I'm picking the ball. So there's different situations. Sometimes you're not supposed to go for the pick. Sometimes you are. It's really just about having that mentality and the confidence, being able to catch too. It's not easy. Just the last second turn around and the ball's right there. So.
And is that something you've always felt like you've had, or did you kind of pick that up over time in the NFL?
Yeah, I think it's something I've always had. I think those type of things it's when you're young. I played with offense when I was young. I thought I was a receiver. I thought I was going to be Jerry Rice. Didn't happen. But, just the mentality, I thought I was a receiver, so I kind of carried that. Just talking to guys and meeting a lot of guys with the league that are ball hawks, you kind of see, okay, they were in Little League, they were doing that. In high school, they were doing that. It's kind of, you don't just get to the league and just become a ball hog. It's a feel for the game, I think, in my opinion.
Ball hawks aren't made, they're grown.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's one of those things that I don't think – you can improve your catching ability, but that instinct that you have to be able to break on the ball or to, I guess you could, to guess the route, that's definitely something that is – you're I don't know what you're born with, but you definitely have that kind of instinct within you.
Yeah, and I think for Bradley, one of the things he said there that I think makes a lot of sense is that he came up on the offensive side of the ball when he was younger because he does have really good ball skills for a corner, and that's like a lot of times you'll have guys out there and they'll have a ball just knock off their hands and you're like, well, that's why he plays cornerback and not wide receiver. But one of the things that he's done incredibly well in this camp is not only set up interceptions but come down with them. I counted 5 that he had in team drills. He may have had more. I wasn't at every practice, so I can't say definitively that that's the number, but I saw at least 5. And, I think it was the biggest difference when you look at a guy like Paulson Adebo, who was fantastic throughout camp. But one of my criticisms of him, and it's a minor one, is he doesn't come down with enough interceptions. He gets his hand on the ball constantly, but he's not picking it. And I think it's not completely random, right? I think that it's a skill to not only be able to deflect the ball, but to set up the play and break on it and make a catch with your hands, right? And so I have some film here that I'll describe as it's playing because some people are only listening to this, obviously. And I went through, so I didn't go last year because his interception last year actually came in the slot, but it was one of those lucky, like, okay, the quarterback just kind of threw a ball and it just fell into your hands kind of deals. So I didn't look at that one, but I did go back to his time with the Texans. And so I think I have 4 interceptions here, and all 4 are in zone coverage. 3 of the 4 are in off coverage. And you can see here, you're looking at 10 yards cushion of space. And so if you're ever looking and trying to figure out whether someone is in zone or man as a corner, look at where their back is facing, right? That's the easiest way to identify it. If a cornerback is playing man, typically their back is going to be facing the middle of the field. If they're playing zone, their back is going to be facing the sideline. And the reason is when you're playing man, you are almost always trying to use the sideline as a second defender. So you are trying to force an outside release, and you are trying to limit the route tree of the receiver to only things that can be run with an outside release. So when you look at these plays, you can say, okay, he's in zone, and because of the way he's approaching this, and as you can see in this one, he is, about as clearly in zone as you can be. He's not disguising it at all. He's retreating, making sure that he's not getting beat to the sideline and forcing the receiver to the middle of the field. And what you can see he does really well, and this is kind of cut off because the All-22 from the NFL kind of sucks these days. He just tracks the ball like a receiver, and he just goes up and gets it. And the ability to set up a play like that is much easier to make in zone coverage and off coverage. And it's not something you see a lot out of the slot. It's not something you see a lot from the Saints because they thrive in man coverage. And that's why, he's not necessarily a corner that makes a ton of sense for the Saints. And that's why it makes a lot of sense why Paulson Adebo is like above him on the pecking order, because this is a team that does want to prioritize man coverage. But you can still find ways to take advantage of this skill set. And I just don't think that the slot is the best way. I want to see him in dime coverages. I want to see him in these off coverages where he's not being asked to jam. He's being allowed to just run down the field and make a play on the ball. That was against the Titans. He makes an interception. This is against, friend of the program, Jameis Winston. You can see here, he's on the outside. He's setting up outside. Oh, no, I went too far. He's setting up outside, so he's going to try to force this receiver inside. I think it might be Mike Evans. And he just cuts it. He undercuts the out. Much like Janoris Jenkins, if you want to go back to the 2020 season, it's a very similar interception to what Jack Rabbit had in that opener against Tom Brady. They're trying to run that speed out, and he just jumps it. He knows the play, and he jumps it. This is one of the few that's in press coverage, but you can see he's still not jamming. He's still trying to force, this might be Chris Hogan, still trying to force the receiver inside, and he's able to undercut it and go get the ball. And he has a really good sense for where the ball is going to be. And when he gets there, he's not just trying to bat it down. He is trying to intercept it. And that's, to me, the hallmark of being a ball hawk versus just being a, jamming physical corner, which is what I would classify Paulson Adebo as. This is back with the Broncos. He's wearing 29 in this. He's at the bottom of the screen. And this is a tough one, but you can see he just tracks this ball. This is Josh Rosen, probably with the worst pass I've ever seen. And he just tracks it like a receiver, and that's what he's able to do. And I want to see him be able to play to his strengths. If you go back to the Chargers game, he got beat deep on a play where they asked him to get up and jam on the edge, play man-to-man coverage with no help over the top, and it didn't work. And so I think that Bradley Roby is a guy who, I think he would hold up in the slot, and I think he's going to get reps in the slot. But I don't think that is where you want to pigeonhole him. I want to see PJ Williams. I want to see Justin Evans. And I want to see Bradley worked into some dime coverages, some robber coverages where he can use his ball hawking ability and make big plays. Because, broken up passes will change a drive. Big interceptions can change a game. And that's what I want to see from him. And I think he has the ability to do it. And so that's my very long rant on why I don't want to see Bradley Roby banging his head against the wall in the slot all season long.
Well, what if, say you have a healthy Paulson Adebo and you got Marshawn obviously out there as well, but wouldn't your best three corners on the field, you throw him into the mix as your slot guy?
Again, it's going to depend on how the offense is attacking you, right? I don't want to see Bradley Roby lined up against Kyle Pitts constantly. I don't want to see him lined up against the tight end of the other team if they're in the slot. Even like Chris Godwin, a really big-bodied wide receiver that's going to try to bully you. I don't like that matchup for him. But if they're going 5 wide and you just have to match up across the board, yeah, sure, throw him in the slot, allow him to play off and make a play on the ball. So, yeah, I'm not saying he can't play in the slot. I just don't think that, I think there's this tendency because CJ was so good and he was always the best option in the slot when he was here. I think the natural kind of tendency will be to say, okay, let's just lock that down with another corner or another defensive back and say, this is your job now. And when I asked Dennis about this, he said, the idea is you're going to rotate. You're going to have different schemes in place, particularly as it pertains to the slot, for different matchups. So, there will be some weeks where maybe Bradley Roby makes the most sense. There will be some weeks where maybe Justin Evans, maybe PJ Williams, more physical guys make sense because you really want to make the tight end, make the big wide receiver, make the AJ Browns of the world feel you when you can. And so that's where I want to see it from him. But, again, Bradley Roby, I think, is a very good cornerback. I don't think he's a perfect cornerback. So that's why you have to, a perfect cornerback to me, like a Marshawn, a Patrick Peterson, guys who you can put anywhere on the field and trust that they will be able to do it as at the top level at their position. I think that from a physical standpoint, Bradley can get taken advantage of. And so you have to be careful about how you use him and how you deploy him. And I think that's why I think this is a good year to have Dennis Allen as your head coach because he's going to know that, he's going to understand that. I think he's going to do a good job with it.
I definitely appreciate Roby's ball skills and all, but the term ball hawk, I think we mentioned it earlier too, kind of gets overused a lot, just like GOAT. Everyone's the greatest of all time. Just devil's advocate here, Bradley Roby's never had more than 2 interceptions in a season, and we saw Paulson Adebo his rookie year come down with 3.
There's an element of randomness to interceptions, right? But it's just a scenario where one of those interceptions from from Paulson was that crazy one-handed interception against the Falcons, and so it's more about putting him in position to make an impact. And I think it's, I would liken Bradley to Jackrabbit.
Yeah.
Where, I don't think Jackrabbit was necessarily the best man cover corner, but he got the job done. But he was a guy who, you would trust to be able to jump a route. Now, I've talked glowingly about the term ball hawk. It can be a bad thing. It's not always, and Bradley said this, you're not always supposed to go for the pick. Sometimes it's the wrong play. Sometimes, it's like in basketball when someone gets really over aggressive and goes for a steal and then you miss and then all of a sudden it's a layup instead of, them having to run offense. That can happen. So you have to be careful about how you do it and how you try to jump routes, because you don't want to jump a route and miss, and then it's a 70-yard touchdown behind you because you left the safety out to dry. So there is hit and miss there, and that's why when you look at a Paulson Adebo and you say, yes, I'm very much okay with a guy who is able to just play physical coverage and knock the ball down. That's what you need the corner to be able to do. But I think that there's a point where you want to reach with every cornerback where you can say, okay, this is the position I want them to play. And you want to understand what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, and put them in positions to succeed. And that's what coaching is, right? That's what Brian Kelly would say he didn't do for Malik Neighbors. It's the old, they make a mistake and you say, no, it's not your fault. It's my fault for putting you in the game. That sort of thing.
Right. We've got to be better as coaches.
Yeah. That's my favorite thing. Oh, yeah. No, don't worry. It's not the player's fault. It's my fault because I thought they were better than they are.
Yeah. Kind of like a little backhand right there. Exactly.
Oh, man. That blew up on my Twitter. Brian Kelly saying, yeah, we made a mistake. We thought he was good.
Yeah.
It's the type of thing you can say in college, and all you have is a transfer. If you say that in the NFL, the players are going to fight you. Anyway. But yeah, that's my long rant about Bradley Roby. I really do like Bradley Roby. And I think that the important thing for him is making sure that he is put in positions to succeed. And I don't think that having him constantly trying to jam people in the slot is the best option. That's all that is. That's what that boils down to. If you don't want to listen to that whole rant, you can just fast forward to like the final 30 seconds. And that's my take.
And you know what, with Roby too, he's got the quote unquote skins on the wall. And yeah, was just one of those other studs. I know everybody was definitely talking about Adebo during training camp of being one of the all-stars, but Roby's training camp was definitely just as good.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you saw some of the warts in that Chargers game when he got beat over the top. And I think DA after the game said, yeah, that wasn't a good call by me. That would put him in a bad situation. And that's good coaching. Like, that's not blaming the player for being who he is, saying, I didn't put him in position to succeed, because there's a thin line there between being an irritant and throwing a guy under the bus and actually being honest and saying that was a bad call. But I was going to say, the other thing, you might not have the luxury of saying we can play Bradley Roby in the slot, because you might need him to start on the outside.
Right.
Because
exactly.
As we just established on the injury report, we haven't seen Paulson Adebo in a week and a half. He's dealing with an ankle injury. And even if he does go at this point, you have to at least have some concern about how that ankle holds up in the game. So I'm not sure you have the luxury of being able to say, yeah, we're just going to load up Bradley Roby and slot reps and trust that he's going to be available, if we need him on the outside. So I think if you're looking at the slot against the Falcons, you are probably looking at PJ Williams getting the bulk of those snaps. And I feel okay with that. I think he'll hold up in those snaps.
Do you think Justin Evans could be a guy that could take that duty too?
Oh, for sure. But I think he's the rotational guy. I think, and Deuce McAllister brought this up, I think you're going to see a good number of three safety reps. You're going to see, I think you're going to see Tyron in the slot. I think you could see Marcus in the slot, Marcus May. I think you could see Justin Evans in the slot. But I think you're going to try to confuse people. You're going to try to move those guys around so the offense doesn't know exactly what you were looking at every time. But again, that's going to put a big onus on these guys communicating in the right way. And when that doesn't go well, it can mean big plays on the back end. So hopefully it works. I think the Falcons are a good team to test that against, because I don't think they have a receiver that scares you down the field. And so that's, if I'm trying to dummy out a, disguised heavy defense, this is the team that I'm looking to do it against.
Yeah, there's definitely questions with the Falcons receiving core. And I know they tried to, add a guy like Drake London in the first round, but there's even question marks if he's going to be able to play on Sunday. I'm pretty sure they're going to, find a way to get him onto the field. But yeah, your big concern is Kyle Pitts, who's a tight end, but really a wide receiver, if to be honest.
Yeah, he's a big wide receiver. He's what Evan Engram was supposed to be, right? He he's not dissimilar to Michael Thomas in the sense that, he's not going to blow by you, but he's athletic enough and he's big enough that he's always open, right? Like, that's why Michael Thomas is always open, because you can throw him open at any time. And that's what Kyle Pitts is. If you throw the right ball, he's going to catch it because you can't move him. He's going to beat you up and he's going to get where he needs to go because he's a big dude and he can do it. But yeah, that's it. And I think we could probably cut it off there because the next segment's going to be heavily on the Falcons anyway. But yeah, Bradley Roby, Ballhawk,
good lead in.
TM.
I missed that part.
I said TM.
Oh,
trademark. It's like when Paris Hilton tried to trademark "That's hot." I don't think he could do it with Ballhawk. Anyway, that's the end of that segment. Inside Black and Gold. Stick around. We're going to go through the 3 keys that I think the Saints need to hammer on to dominate the Falcons, not just win, beat the bricks off them and make them remember it.
Where else can you get a Paris Hilton reference too?
Yes. I should probably cut that out or I'll get sued. Stick around on Inside Black and Gold. All right. I have all these banners. I have all these clips. Guys, I do this for you. This isn't even, these things aren't even on the podcast. I need you to understand that. This is just for you, Tube. Yeah. All right. Okay. Do you want to lead us into this final segment here?
Sure. We're in the final quarter of the Inside Black and Gold podcast, gearing up for Sunday's matchup against the Dirty Birds. And Jeff and I are going to talk about now not just beating the Falcons. He wants to dominate this team.
Yes. And I think you're mixing up you got like a mixed sports thing going on, because it's more like a hockey thing. This is the third segment,
period, right?
Yeah. So yeah, we're in the third period, but I think quartered us. We're in the final. I don't know. Yeah, we're gonna have to come up with a better way to describe it than quarters, because these are 3. So
once I was saying final quarter, I realized that's incorrect, but I had to roll with it.
Yeah, you did a good job. You're a professional. I wasn't. Anyway, so yes, we are going to go through the three keys that I think the Saints need to focus on and do well in order to just flat out dominate the Falcons, make them wish they had never even bothered to show up, make them consider putting Desmond Ridder in the game in week 1, as I think that will be something they consider throughout the week, because Marcus Mariota, it's not that good.
Did you see the Falcons head coach kind of flipped out on the local media there about asking about Desmond Ridder?
Did he? Arthur Smith?
He's like, I'm not doing any hypotheticals. He said that famous line, and he's like, Mariota is our starter.
Yeah. Until he's not.
We'll see how that goes.
Okay. And on to that. Key number 1, shut down the run. Now, I went through, I punished myself yesterday, and I decided to go back through a handful of the first 6 games from the Titans in the 2019 season. And the reason I did that is we don't have a ton of tape on Marcus Mariota and how you should expect him to be used with the Falcons. But if you go back to 2019 and you watch some Titans games, there's this guy named Arthur Smith in his first year as the offensive coordinator for the Titans. There's this kid named Marcus Mariota starting at quarterback. That's the head coach quarterback tandem out in Atlanta right now. And while the offense isn't going to be a carbon copy of what you saw in Tennessee, I do think you're going to see a lot of the same tendencies that you saw there. One of those things is they run play action a lot, like not just a high percentage. I mean, this is like, you ever see a kid who like puts ketchup on everything and you're like, that's gross. What are you doing? That's how Arthur Smith uses play action. When the second game of the season against the Colts, they ran play action on like 8 of their first 10 pass plays, and they ran the ball like 6 times. So like you're seeing a play fake repeatedly over and over and over again. And the interesting thing about it is it almost, when you use it that way, it almost works the opposite of how a play fake typically would, where you're running a play action because you're trying to suck up the defense into thinking it's a run, and then you're throwing it over the top. You're creating space behind the linebackers, and you can make some hay there. But when you run it every time, it almost has this effect of desensitizing the linebackers, where they're like, oh, they're doing it again. I'm not going to even bother kind of coming up and like considering that this might be a run, because they run play action on almost every play. And so that actually makes it easier on the running back, because when you do hand it off, and this Falcon and the Titans did a lot of zone read action. I expect we'll see a lot of that from the Falcons this weekend. You know, when you do hand it off and the linebackers are a step slow, that means you actually create some extra space. And for a team that doesn't run the ball that well, you know, Cordero Patterson is a solid running back, but he's not even really a running back. He's a wide receiver. So, and I think Tyler Allgeier is another guy we're going to see. You know, if you can shut down the run and make that not even a viable thing where you have to even consider it, and you can just run blitz and go straight at Mariota, I think that's going to go a long way. And I actually talked to Dennis Allen I asked Dennis Allen about this on the conference call today, and here's what he said.
Dia, when you're trying to prepare for, you know, a heavy play action team, you know, what are some of the keys? What are some of the important things that you have to look for and you have to kind of train for in those matchups?
You know, the first thing is you know, you have to, you know, make the run game ineffective, and therefore the play action is not as effective. And so, you know, we're going to have to do a good job, you know, of being able to you know, stop the run and try to make them get into a one-dimensional type of game. And but that's certainly, you know, the challenge that you face when teams are able to run the ball and they're a play-action team. It makes it more difficult if they're able to run it effectively.
Do you hear me? I don't hear you.
Yeah, I muted myself so I could take a drink of water. I never unmuted it.
Gotcha.
But yeah, that is a very boring and obvious answer, but an important one. If you can stop the run against the Falcons, you are not only going to limit what they can do on the ground, you are going to limit what they can do in the passing game. And if you can do both of those things effectively, you can dominate a team.
Yeah, and it's actually pretty impressive. I'm really surprised on what Cordero Patterson was able to do last year on that team, but I guess they really had no other real options other than Kyle Pitts. But it was kind of like his career was revitalized in Atlanta, which is kind of funny to say considering how terrible that offense was.
Yeah. And, you know, when I say I really don't like watching Marcus Mariota play, it's because of plays like this. Look at this. This is a guy who is mobile. This is a guy who like should be able to use his feet, but when he gets pressure, he does. He actually reminds me a lot of Taysom Hill in that, you know, one of the things that one of the ways Taysom drives me insane. He's this incredible athlete, but you only see the athleticism when he pulls the ball down and runs. You never see him using his athleticism to extend a play to like escape the pocket and throw it. It's always, okay, I'm either just kind of standing still in the pocket or sprinting downfield. And that's what you see from Mariota here. It's a very similar like approach where it's like, there's pressure here, but it's not a terrible pocket. He should be able to step up, but he can't. He just kind of like flings the ball down the field, and it's just awful. And like, that's, you know, you don't have a job a lot of the time. And I think that's a big part of the reason why. So if you can pressure him and also take away the play fakes, there's one other play that I'll show here that I found in this long watch. That one thing that the Falcons like to do, and here's that hard play fake, one thing that the Titans like to do under Arthur Smith that I think we're going to see is they do this hard play fake into a screen. And when you have Derrick Henry, it obviously works a little better. But it's this really weird like play fake where then he flips around and just throws this long screen over to Derrick Henry. And a man-to-man team like the Saints could get beat here. It's very similar to the play that the Saints ran that actually inadvertently ended up in Alvin Kamara's hands against the Packers, where you're just creating traffic in the middle of the field and you're sending the receivers to the opposite side, and all of the coverage is running with them. If you're in man coverage, one of the disadvantages is you're turning your back and running. And so you're not able to see what's happening behind you. So if you can dump in a screen behind them, you can make a big play. And especially if you have a really athletic running back who gets a full head of steam and you're not stopping them, then it can work. And the Falcons or the Titans did this 3 times in the first 2 games this was the Browns and against the Colts. And I think this is a play that if I'm the Saints, I'm on alert for it, because this is a play that can burn you if you have, Marshawn Lattimore on that side and he's up going downfield with his back turned. All of a sudden, Cordell Patterson has the ball in the flat and he's sprinting down the sideline. It can be a big play. And so that's one of the plays that I did that like I'm looking for it, because first game of the year, you've been running all these drills, you've been running all these plays, you've been installing all this stuff. And I think you're going to break that one out from the Falcons. So that's you got to be aware of the play action. You got to stay at home, and then you have to be on alert for screens, both to the tight end and the running back, because they ran a lot to Delaney Walker back with the Titans as well. Very good tight end who probably doesn't get talked about enough. Was really good for a long time, and now this is a team with Kyle Pitts, so they're not going to use the tight end less. So that's something I'm looking for.
I'm curious to see if Cam Jordan will have the same success against Mariota that he did against Cam Jordan, against Matt Ryan, who was like his best buddy that got sent away now to Indianapolis. And heard him on CBS Sports talking about how he's sad. He's going to miss him, and he just wants to give Mariota a hug now.
Yeah, and Arthur Smith also said that he was kind of hoping that Cam would go into broadcasting with Sean, but that didn't happen
yet.
So.
Soon enough, Cam definitely seems like a guy primed for some kind of broadcasting gig.
And he's basically already in broadcasting now, so it's just a matter of when he makes that his full-time job.
Yeah, he can just that his personality and the way he's able to just relate to, I feel like, everybody just makes him a great personality.
No doubt. Okay, let's move on to key number 2. Avoid turnovers. Now, this is obvious, but it also needs to happen. If you look at how the Saints found ways to win games down the stretch last season, they did virtually nothing on offense. Taysom Hill's entire MO, his modus operandi was don't turn the ball over. Put the defense in good positions. Take chances where it makes sense, and it does not make sense in a lot of situations. Run the ball, get a few first downs. Maybe we can kick a field goal. It worked to a perfection against the Bucs. It worked against the Panthers. It worked against the Jets. And it's just, when you can do that, when you have a really good defense and you can just not turn the ball over on offense and not give this team who shouldn't have a chance to stay with you, false hope, and let them hang around, then you can win a game going away. And that's what I haven't seen the Saints do enough in the last few years, is just stop toying with teams, right? Don't let the Giants hang around. You're up 10 points. Make it 17. Make it 2 scores, or make it 3 scores. Make it so that fourth quarter is boring. I want to watch boring fourth quarters if I am the Saints, because this is a team that should be dominant on the defensive side of the ball, and they should be able to put up enough points that you can win comfortably. Not every game has to be this, oh no, what if Nick Foles leads a game-winning drive? What if we can't tackle Saquon Barkley right now? These are situations that you should be able to avoid, and they have found themselves on the wrong side of it too often because turnovers come up in inopportune situations, and you don't take advantage of the teams that you should beat. And this is a long season. If you can find ways to get rest because, you're beating a team by 40 points who you should beat, maybe 40 is an exaggeration. I just think the Falcons are that bad. That's what you need to do is keep the ball take the ball away from them and be smart, not turn it over on your side. And when you're talking about Jameis Winston, you always have to consider the turnover liability that he presents. And if he can continue to show that that's not something that's going to bug him, it's going to go a long way. And especially this week in terms of just making this a laugher.
How come when every time anyone talks about Jameis, obviously the 30-30 season gets brought up, but last year's numbers kind of get tossed aside. And obviously he was impressive when healthy in the 7 games with the 14 touchdowns, 3 picks. You could tell that he was more selective in his throws, except for that one at least touchdown to, what was it, Marquez Callaway, that he told Sean Payton, oh, God, that was the God's plan play.
It was God's plan. Well, I don't throw them aside. I think he was good last year, and he needs to continue that, right? He needs to prove that that wasn't an outlier,
right,
and that is how he can continue to operate. Now, I also think that to an extent, I want to see him be a little more aggressive, right? I'm okay with, if you're putting up a 50-50 ball to a receiver and you're giving him a chance and it gets tipped and it goes for an interception, there's nothing you can do about that. You are making the right play, and sometimes you just have bad luck. I'm okay with that. What I'm not okay with is if you go back to that Panthers game, there were a couple throws in that game that were just like, why? There was at the end of the first half, he was like falling to the ground and he just lobbed a ball down the middle of the field. You were on the edge of field goal range. You probably weren't with the kickers they had last year, but you were on the edge of field goal range. If it was Will Lutz, you might have a chance. And throwing an interception there is just eliminating any opportunity you have for, Will Lutz kicked a 59-yarder this year. He has that leg. Turning the ball over there because you just wanted to take a chance when you shouldn't have was a bad decision, right? He didn't do that a lot. That was not something that you left a lot of games saying, wow, he got lucky here. But, you don't throw 30 interceptions by accident. And I think that it's always going to be something that you have to continue to train yourself to just not take unnecessary risks. And that's what you're going to have to see this year.
Yeah, I think that obviously that season always gets brought up with Winston, and it's always the negative that gets brought up, which is a little annoying. And everyone disregards the 5,000 passing yards and also tossing the 33 touchdowns. But I get it.
Okay, here's the thing. If I'm supposed to ignore the 30 interceptions as an aberration, then I should also be able to ignore the 5,000 yards as an aberration, because you don't throw for 5,000 yards unless you're losing in a lot of games because this was not a good team. This was not a team that won a lot of games. So if you're throwing 5,000 yards and going 11-5, then fine. If you're missing the playoffs, it's not the same thing. It's great that he threw for all those yards, but I'm not going to hold the 30 interceptions against him, but I'm also not going to pretend that was some spectacular season because he threw for 5,000 yards.
Well, Tom Brady did come in the next year and win a Super Bowl with that team.
Yeah. But the rebuttal is, who was he throwing to? I think the 4 touchdowns that he threw in the Super Bowl were to players that were not on the team when Jameis Winston was on it.
Good point there. Yeah,
I think that is a
dirty blanket.
There's a lot of disingenuous arguments to make Jameis look worse than he is, and I think that's one of them, because that was a very different team than the one Jameis was on. But anyway, I digress there. We don't have to get too far into that. D. Granger here. Come on, man. Let's not get cocky. The Saints don't live up to these so-called easy games. Right. That's what I'm talking about. That's why I'm saying these are the keys in order for the Saints to not have another just obnoxious loss to a team they should beat.
I do think it's going to be a close game, though. I would not take the 5.5 points and the Saints. I'm more comfortable betting the under in the game than I am putting money on the Saints to win. Although I obviously think they are going to win the game, but I still think it's going to be like that field goal type of game, just because it is an NFC South opponent and we've seen it way too many times.
Yeah, 5.5 is a lot. There's a lot of ways that a game can end within 5.5 points and honestly not be that close, right? That's why I have a hard time with those spreads, because You could be winning by 17 points, and then a team cuts it to 10 with like 2 minutes left, gets the ball back and scores with like 3 seconds left and fails at an onside kick. The game was never that close, but you don't cover the spread. And that's why sports gambling is heartburn inducing, because that happens all the time. The 3.5 points for LSU. I made the mistake. Someone texted me and said, "Hey, should I take LSU minus 3.5?" And me, in my infinite wisdom, didn't say, "I don't know enough about college football. I shouldn't be giving you betting advice." And I said, "Yeah, you should totally bet LSU minus 3.5."
They love you now.
Well, and my rebuttal afterward was, I'm not giving you a refund, because if they make that extra point, I'm pretty sure they cover, because that really felt like a situation where Texas A&M would have been reeling, and LSU had a really good chance of either winning by 7 or winning by 4. And that's where sports gambling is obnoxious, because you'll never know. You'll never know, because that was a really close to being a insane bad beat on the Florida State side. I might have said Texas A&M. And instead, you just never got to see what happened. So sports gambling is the worst. And I think we can leave it there.
Yeah, I just don't have enough money to gamble. Everyone thinks that's funny that, I cover sports. I'm involved in sports 24/7, but I have what they call scared money because I don't have much of it.
Yeah. I bet, it's funny. I gambled a lot more when it was illegal than I do now. I don't know why. Maybe it was just the excitement of it. I was like, oh, I can get paid out in Bitcoin. Great.
Bad boy.
Now it's like I have all these apps and they're all telling me to do parlays and stuff. And it's like, it's weird to know that I'm getting taken advantage of willingly, when before it was like, at least it's this like, clandestine operation off the coast of like, Kamchatka. Anyway, it's strange.
It's so easy now too. Obviously, it's just it's on your phone.
Although, I was out at Caesars last Friday. They unveiled the new sports book. I am not getting paid by Caesars to say this. I highly recommend going there and watching a Saints game, because they have a 145-foot screen.
Ooh.
It can be like 100 different screens, or it can be 2 gigantic screens. And it's like, it's like, how a moth just stares at like a bug zapper. Like, that's how I felt. I was just like enthralled. And if you're someone who likes to gamble, you like to do live odds, like that would be a really cool way to do it. I'm never going to get to go for a Saints game because I'm working, obviously. Although, that would be great if they're not going to fly me out to Atlanta. Maybe I'll go cover the game live from Harrah's and get free drinks.
Yeah, and then
that wouldn't be the worst way to do it.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea at all. I mean, I'm still waiting to see like if the Superdome eventually gets a sports book in there, since they are the Caesar Superdome now, and waiting for also slot machines in the concession area.
Yeah, I'm gonna pitch Harris. He's like, hey, pay me to come out there, and I'll do Inside Black and Gold live. Give me drinks, and we'll talk about the sports book.
It'd be like, you just trash sports gambling. Why would we bring you in?
Everyone trashes sports gambling. That's part of the deal. Anyway, okay. We have one more key. And this is even more obvious than the last one. Just show up. Just show up. Just show up. Like, if you go back, there's a common thread between the losses to the Falcons in the last several years. And it is that in the first half of these games, the Saints have just been laughably ineffective. What year, the first half, week 9, that loss to the Falcons that they should have won. They took a lead in the last 50 seconds, and they blew it. They were shut out in the first half. They scored 22 points in the fourth quarter to come back and take a lead. 2019, week 10, that crazy game, the day after LSU beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa, I will go to my deathbed saying that that had an impact because these guys were up late partying. Even though there was no LSU players on the team, there's probably more Alabama players involved. Anyway, 6 points in the first half, and they lose that game. I think 22-9. Come out strong in the last 4 wins. Last year, week 18, 24 points in the first half. Week 11 of 2020, 10 points in the first half. Week 13 of 2020, 14 points in the first half. Week 14 of 2019, 17 points in the first half. Come out with a purpose. Don't let this team hang around. They're not good enough to just kind of waltz in there and expect to put up 7 points in the first half and not get pushed. I don't know. It drives me nuts when I see a team that is this talented just go into games and just putter around for the first 5 drives, and then it's like, oh yeah, we're good, let's win now. I hate it. Again, I want to see boring fourth quarters. In order to have a boring fourth quarter, you need to have an exciting first half. That's my final key.
I think the tough part is, though, too, with the Falcons, obviously, this is everything to them is beating the Saints. If not, their goal of making the Super Bowl, like most other teams in the NFL, we can kind of see that this team is kind of in a rebuild and tank for next season. But even if they are in tank mode, it's still the New Orleans Saints that they'd love nothing more than to notch the win again, so they don't have to hear Saints fans constantly battering them.
Well, right. And no team is tanking in week 1, right? Even if you've built a roster that you think is probably going to get you a top 10 pick, you never know. I mean, there's a chance you catch lightning in a bottle and you just start really well, and all of a sudden you're making trades at the deadline because you're trying to improve this team. But you can demoralize that team quickly.
Yes.
Right? My dad, the best advice, I ran cross country in high school, and the best advice my dad ever gave me was, if you're in a close race with somebody and they're maybe 50 yards behind you, you get to a sharp turn. The second you get around that turn, sprint. Because by the time they get around that turn, they're going to think you're only going to be the same distance ahead. But then you're way farther ahead, and they're like, what the heck happened? That's what you want to do in these games. You want to just get out to a lead that they're just like, well, we're not getting there. And then they're not happy. Then they don't have the motivation, right? That's how you win games easily. It's what the Patriots used to do to the AFC East every year. And I think that the NFC South this year is very similar to what the AFC East was with a lot of those Tom Brady Patriots teams that just sleepwalked to 13-3 and won the division. They were able to rest everyone down the stretch. And that's what I want. I think if this team has a chance to make it to a Super Bowl, which is unlikely, I think, but if you're making the playoffs, you have a chance. And I think for this team to get there, I think they need to be able to rest players down the stretch. And in order to do that, you have to win the games you're supposed to win. And you want to win the games you're supposed to win handily. So that's why I just spent the last 20 minutes plus explaining these are the 3 keys that I think the Saints needed to win this game going away. That is stop the run, that is avoid turnovers, and that is get out to a fast start.
Yeah, and obviously Peter King believes that this team can go out and jump on these teams early and put them away, because he had them as the top seed in the NFC, which was really surprising.
He did at 12-5 again, which, if there's no team better than 12-5, sure. It's, I have a hard time seeing this team get to 13-4, but in order to get there, you have to start well, right? No team starts 2-5 and then finishes 12-5. Right. So you need to start well. And if you can start well and win these games easily, then you can start talking about, realistic opportunities to get a high seed and to go deep in the playoffs. But if you can't come out and just show the Falcons exactly where they stand in this division, then I'm not buying it. And that's it. That's the end for me. That's all I have. That's the end of my rant.
The way the defense we're all expecting to perform for the Saints, along with all these new weapons on offense, hopefully we don't see a suspension for a guy like Alvin Kamara. I still want to see the development of Taysom Hill at tight end. to me, this offense has that ability to be able to complement this dominating defense as well and able to put up the points. It's just there's just a lot of questions that have to be answered still, obviously.
No doubt. And the one more question we can get to before we sign off here. Demetrius Ramsey, what kind of statistical year do you think Jameis will have? I honestly don't know. There's so many variables, and I don't think that he has to have a huge yardage season for this team to be highly successful. I think that he needs to take advantage of Alvin Kamara, and he needs to take advantage of Michael Thomas. And I think if he's able to do that, then the results will take care of themselves because the defense is always going to be there. I would be happy with anything around 3,800 yards, 25 touchdowns, and fewer than 15 interceptions. I would be happy with that. And I think that will get you to the playoffs.
Yeah, I was guesstimating around 27, 28 touchdown throws.
Yeah.
And in that 12, 13 interception range. Yardage, yeah, maybe I don't think he'll even flirt with 4,000 this year.
I mean, I think he can. It's a 17-game season, so if you play all 17 games, that makes it a little easier. But I just don't think. I think if you're winning the way you want to be winning, then you're not having a ton of high yardage games because you are keeping these games very low scoring on the other side, and you are just trying to run the clock out in a lot of these second halves. So, I think. I think if you're in a situation where Jameis is pushing 5,000 yards, things have gone wrong. And it means the defense isn't playing to the level that you think they should. But I don't think there's anything stopping Jameis from throwing for 5,000 yards if you end up in a lot of shootouts. But again, if the Saints are in a lot of shootouts, then I think they're in trouble.
Right. Just like you said earlier, if Michael Thomas is breaking his own record, things have gone drastically wrong for the rest of the offense.
Right. And that's why I wouldn't take Jameis in fantasy. And it's not because I don't like Jameis or trust Jameis. I just think, I want my fantasy quarterback to be on the worst defensive team in football because they are going to be throwing it constantly.
You got Trey Lance, though. The Niners are pretty good.
That's true. Darn it. Oh, you want to see? I had a great draft last night. Yahoo gave me an A- and said I'm going to go 14-1. It was my 2 QB league.
Jeff, how many teams are you in?
Too many.
How many leagues?
Well, I usually have 2 redraft leagues and I have 2 dynasty leagues. But y'all dragged me into the listener league, so now I have 3. But these are both like really long-standing leagues that let's see. I want to share it because I think my roster is impressive, and I'll probably cut this out of the podcast.
I was going to say you're roster baiting now.
What?
You're roster baiting now.
Roster. Is that a thing? Did you just make that up?
No. That was in the show The League. I don't know if you ever.
I was going to say, that sounds very much like a league thing. Yeah, that's too funny. I don't remember that, but it's like that's such a good callback. Roster baiting. Oh, that's gross. Okay, Chrome tab.
See, I am in a 2 quarterback league as well, and I do have Jameis as my second quarterback.
So my issue in 2 quarterback leagues has always been that I wait too long to take a quarterback.
Yeah.
Because it goes against everything in my DNA to take a quarterback in the first 4 rounds of a draft. But in 2 quarterback leagues, you just have to suck it up and do it. And so that's what I did in this league. Let's see. Share. See if I can do this. I'm testing the limits of my StreamYard here. There it is. So I was able to get Austin Eckler with my number 1 pick. And then I went the complete opposite of my typical draft strategy. And
I was going to say, you got some impressive QBs.
I went Joe Burrow in the 2nd round. And then I came back because I just didn't like any of the wide receivers. Like, I didn't like where everything was lining up. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to take a wide receiver I don't really feel confident in, or a running back I don't feel confident in. So I took Joe Burrow in the 2nd round. Then I came back around and took Lamar Jackson in the 3rd round.
I'm sure guys that were drafting you were so happy with that.
Oh, and then there was a crazy run on quarterbacks. So someone took Trey Lance in the 4th round.
That's the great thing when you start to be able to dictate what the rest of the draft does by your action.
That's why I was able to have such a good draft, because I got people to do stupid things.
Yes.
And so I was able to grab Kyle Pitts in like the 6th round. And I got, Eli Mitchell as my RB2, which is solid. I was able to get David Montgomery. And these are all like late round picks. I got Brandon Cooks, Cordero Patterson, Devontae Smith, Brandon Ayuk. Like, I don't have a wide receiver 1.
So you're going to start Pitts and Patterson against the Saints?
I'm thinking about it. I'll probably end up starting Ayuk, just because I don't think that Cordero is going to be able to do much against the Saints, but he did last year. So if I had to, I could. This is also a tough league because, as you can see, so it's 2 QB, 2 wide receiver, 2 running back, tight end, and 3 flex. So it's a 24 round draft.
Yeah.
I made sure to get Taysom Hill there too. Oh yeah, and then there's defensive players.
I think Cordero hurt the Saints too when he was with the Bears.
He had that kick return.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, this is the end of the podcast where I'm, as Steve put it, I'm roster baiting.
Look how great my team is.
Yeah, but I was also able to get Melvin Gordon and Kareem Hunt like way late while people were picking defenses, and it's like that's you see how big these rosters are, that like just being able to hang on to that guy in case one of those, if Javonte Williams or Nick Chubb misses a game, all of a sudden I have an RB1.
No, you definitely got an impressive bench too.
Well, like I said, I don't have a wide receiver 1, although I really do like Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think he's going to have a big year. And Mike Williams, he's on the top end of the wide receiver 2, I think. So like I have like 5 wide receiver 2s, but I don't have a wide receiver 1. Anyway, Yahoo seems to think I'm going to go 14-1. I think that's unlikely, but
Devonta Smith in Philly, man, I'm interested to see what he does in year 2 as well.
Yeah, but he's dealing with AJ Brown there now, so that's going to be tough.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway,
although there might be a ton of attention on AJ, so who knows?
True. He might face single coverage, and that'll help. I also just don't like Jalen Hurts, so. Anyway, okay.
Understood. Neither do the Saints.
I think I'll stop roster baiting there, and we can wrap this up. Steve, do you want to lead us out?
Yeah, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Inside Black and Gold. Steve Geller, along with Jeff Nowak, and getting ready for game day, Saints fans. And I know everybody's just as pumped up as us to see what this team can do against those Dirty Birds. Remember to give us a like on YouTube, and also download our podcasts on any platform that you care to. We're available everywhere, even the Odyssey app now, which is wonderful. And I hoping that we have a happy post-game wrap-up as well after now that we're in the regular season mode. We'll be talking about what we saw on the field and the aftermath afterwards.
Yeah, well, let's figure out a time for that. But yeah, we should have a pod posting early Monday morning as kind of a recap, catch up after the Falcons game. Also tune in for First Take, which for a noon start, I think we'll start at 8
a.m.
Ugh.
Woo!
Yikes.
Plenty of coffee.
For you to be 9.
Correct.
Because this is a 1. So in Atlanta, it's a 1 p.m. start, which would mean a 9 a.m. First Take.
I'll still be heading to the stadium though, probably 6 a.m. with our engineer Robert Carroll, because he's got to set up everything, and I roll with him.
That sounds miserable. Anyway.
Yeah, that's what coffee's for.
Tune in for that, 8 a.m. over on WWL AM 870 FM 105.3 in the Odyssey app. We always have a good time, and we're going to do a lot more of this. So thanks, y'all, and we got football coming up. Let's do it. All right. That's it, y'all. End broadcast. Thanks everyone who stuck around. Thanks for everyone on the YouTube. It's always nice to. I always appreciate recording live because it makes me feel like people are watching, which they are, and I stay engaged a little bit more. So good stuff. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, JGP Jr. Appreciate you.
It was. Thanks.